Welcome back to The Explainer. We usually think of justice systems as these very rigid, modern things, right? Filled with paperwork, lawyers, and those sterile, standardized courtrooms. But today, we're diving into something completely different. A form of justice that's deeply rooted in ancient history, yet somehow incredibly relevant right now.
I mean, think about it for a second. Would you be more afraid of a judge's gavel or literally the god of thunder? Now, I know that sounds like a hypothetical question straight out of a mythology textbook, but this is a very real choice happening right now in modern 21st century Nigeria. Based on some absolutely fascinating sociological research coming out of the University of Ibadan, traditional Yoruba gods are actually still actively consulted to catch thieves, expose corruption, and punish criminals. And as you're going to see, the fear they command, it's absolute.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the Oyo Empire's legacy, then look at Sango and Ogun's justice, move on to the modern social survey, and finally wrap up with integrating ancient ways.
Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1. The Oyo Empire's legacy. To really grasp why these gods command so much respect today, we got to travel back to the 16th century. The Oyo Empire started as this kind of obscure entity, but eventually exploded into a colossal political and economic giant in West Africa. By the 18th century, Oyo had built up immense military and administrative power. They had an army and cavalry so formidable that they literally forced surrounding powerhouses like the Dahomey kingdom to pay them tribute for nearly 100 years, from the 1730s all the way to 1819. Basically, Oyo became the undisputed dominant middleman in regional and international trade.
But here's the thing. Military might wasn't their only weapon. The real bedrock of Oyo's long-lasting influence was something historians call cultural solidarity. This was a brilliant socio-political arrangement. By weaving their own cultural and religious beliefs deep into the fabric of all these surrounding regions, they created a belief system that sustained political stability for generations. It was basically an expedient tool of economic imperialism, and it birthed a deep reverence for Oyo's deities that far outlasted the empire itself.
Which brings us to Section 2, Sango and Ogun's justice. And that cultural legacy gave birth to some incredibly strict agents of supernatural punishment. Let's look at Sango first. Sango is actually a real historical figure. He was the third Alaafin or king of Oyo. He was famously known for his terrifying power, his boldness, and, get this, a legendary ability to emit fire from his mouth. He eventually abdicated the throne, but then he transitioned into a feared deity, the god of thunder. Sango absolutely despises crime, especially theft, and people invoke him specifically to hunt down and punish wrongdoers.
And the power of these gods is intensely physical. It's bound to actual objects. Take Sango's thunderbolt, the Adun Ara. The belief is that when Sango carries out his justice, he hauls this physical bolt, which turns burning red hot, straight at the offender. Contrast that with Ogun, the god of iron and war, whose power resides in sacred stone and cutlass shrines. Ogun is fiercely dedicated to truthfulness. He cannot be cajoled, he cannot be bribed, and that's exactly why heavy iron is used as a strict, unyielding instrument of oath-taking. To give you an idea of just how precise Sango's justice is believed to be, researchers documented a really memorable 18th century anecdote from a town called Ikire. So this guy consulted Sango to punish a thief who had stolen his cowries, which were wrapped up in a rag. Shortly after the god was invoked, the thief was struck dead by lightning and brought out into the open. Well, it turned out the thief was a large house rat. The rat had dragged the cowrie rag into its hole. It just goes to show Sango literally misses no one.
Now, invoking Ogun, the god of iron, is equally terrifying and involves some very specific, intense rituals. Suspects might have to undergo something called gun washing. This is where a gun barrel is washed with water mixed with incantations, and the suspect actually has to drink it. Or they might have to cross over a gun or a cutlass, or swear directly before his shrine. The deal is simple. If you're innocent, you're perfectly safe. But if you're guilty, the punishment is swift and often fatal, usually manifesting as terrible accidents involving motor vehicles or iron tools.
And this brilliantly illustrates why these ancient traditions survive so strongly today. When researchers interviewed locals, a stark contrast emerged. Everyday people look at the modern justice system and see something that's slow, super expensive, and completely pervertible. Judges and officials can easily be bribed, but the traditional gods? Their justice is immediate. The cost of the ritual is basically nothing, and most crucially, gods cannot be bribed. They offer a completely incorruptible alternative.
All right, let's look at Section 3, the modern social survey.
Moving from ancient lore into hard modern data, university sociologists want to know exactly how prevalent these beliefs are today. So, they surveyed 600 people across 3 modern Nigerian states. Now, you might assume that only strict traditionalists still hold these beliefs, right? But the demographics tell a totally different, fascinating story. Belief in this traditional justice totally crosses major modern religious lines. Out of everyone surveyed, 65% were Christian, 32% were Muslim, and only a tiny 3% identified purely as traditionalists. Yet that deep reverence and fear of Sango and Ogun permeates the entire community, completely regardless of their primary faith.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer confidence people have in this system. A massive 82% of everyone surveyed confirmed that these gods are still efficient today when invoked for punishment. That is an overwhelming, staggering majority of people who firmly believe that calling on Sango or Ogun reliably and effectively catches criminals.
And this leads right into a highly significant conclusion drawn by the researchers. To quote them directly, the Yoruba natives show preference for the non-conventional punishments of these gods to modern criminal justice systems. Because the fear of supernatural retribution is just so deep-rooted, and the results are seen as incredibly reliable, traditional justice remains a highly trusted alternative to local police and conventional courts.
So the crucial point is coming up in Section 4, integrating ancient ways.
So what exactly do we do with all this sociological data? I mean, if a massive portion of the population trusts the gods way more than they trust the courts, could the two systems actually be merged? Well, the researchers present some really provocative recommendations to officially integrate these gods into Nigeria's legal and political frameworks. They suggest passing constitutional bills to legally accommodate these invocations. Even wilder, they recommend swearing in politicians and public office holders using Sango's thunderbolt or Ogun's cutlass instead of the Bible or Quran. Their argument is that the absolute terror of these gods would virtually eliminate the looting of public treasuries. They're also suggesting we allow oath-taking before traditional priests right inside modern law courts.
Just imagine presenting suspects for swearing in at a modern-day Sango shrine. Researchers point out that utilizing these spaces could drastically reduce the massive burden on local law enforcement. Think about it. If a suspect knows that lying before the shrine means literally invoking the wrath of the thunder god, well, the truth is probably going to come out a whole lot faster than it would in a standard interrogation room.
Which leaves us with a final, really provocative thought to chew on. As modern legal systems all over the world struggle with massive backlogs, terrible corruption, and skyrocketing costs, could they learn something from these ancient deterrents? Is it actually possible that incorporating deep, culturally ingrained fears might be a surprisingly effective way to fix broken legal systems? It's a fascinating question, right? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.